And I think something that is very unique to Brand Source is they offer a lot of ancillary services. So for us, we've now our website, they manage our website for us. We shifted from a lot of traditional media, which was primarily print, radio and TV. That budget is heavily digital now, and they have a fantastic platform for that.
Welcome to Covered by New Leaf. This is a podcast for independent retailers where we're going to help you learn things to help to drive and grow your business. We're going to bring innovation to you. And if you are a retail leader that needs help in any of those categories, this podcast is for you. This week's guest is Shawn Buffum. He is the CEO of Orville's Home Appliance. Orville's Home Appliance is an 8-store retailer that is the power in Buffalo and Rochester, New York. Let's get with Shawn and dive right in. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Shawn. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about Orville's Home Appliance? We'd like to learn about your business.
So Orville's Home Appliances, obviously it's in the name, but we specialize in selling home appliances. We've been in business for 60 years. So started in 1965 right here in Buffalo, New York. And it's a family-owned company. We actually have the third generation now working in the business. And we have 9 locations. We have 8 stores in Buffalo, and then, 4 stores in Buffalo, 4 stores in Rochester, 8 total. And then we have our distribution center, 125,000, soon to be 150,000 square foot warehouse located in between the 2 markets.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I've done business with you guys, as you know, for 20 plus years, over a couple of different administrations. So I can attest to the fact that you've got a wonderful family business and, great people, and it just continues with you, Shawn. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in retail today. Obviously we have a president that is threatening tariffs and changes things quite often. And I believe a couple of days ago, I even saw where he was threatening tariffs on appliances. How is that impacting Orville's business in Buffalo and Rochester?
Yeah, so it's making the business environment challenging, right? Because it's difficult to predict pricing for cost of goods. So our strategy is we are trying to buy in volume as best we can, allowing us to keep our pricing as competitive as possible in the marketplace. The reality is every country of origin, the tariff is impacting those goods differently, and it's a moving target. We don't really know from week to week, month to month, what the final number is going to be in terms of the increase. But like I said, we just try to buy in volume, keep our pricing as competitive as possible. What we did find is there was a little bit of pull ahead demand. So when the tariffs were announced, we did have some consumers who we call it planned duress. So they knew they had to replace something, but they maybe moved that ahead a little bit because they wanted to take advantage of better pricing. And for some people, we had pending building orders that we would reach out to them and say, listen, you may want to just pay in full for this now, get it on order, we'll hold it, and then we'll deliver it when you're ready. Again, strategy to kind of beat that price increase. But what we've seen in terms of the bottom line and top line sales is that it's really not had a major impact on our overall business yet. I think August was kind of that benchmark when we expect to see the tariffs fully in effect. And I think you're going to start seeing rising cost of goods. And unfortunately, that ends up being the consumer that pays the difference, right? Like not many businesses are going to be able to absorb those, 15, 20% increases.
Absolutely. And, I will say, Shawn, I have clients all over the U.S. And so that's a very similar story that I'm hearing from all of them. So, would make sense that it hold true for you guys at Orville's as well. Now, as you are looking at your business, there's obviously a lot of holidays that you sell around. Right now, you've got Labor Day, and is that proving to be a good selling strategy still around the 6 major holidays that we've always had, or what do you see on that front these days?
Yeah, so the that pull ahead demand, we did see a shift for President's Day. That demand moved up a little bit in advance of that holiday. 4th of July in general was relatively soft for a lot of retail. We had a 60-year anniversary sale that coincided with that holiday, so we actually I think benefited from doing two promo events during that period. We just started our Labor Day promotions. Relatively flat so far. We're just going into that weekend, so I'm anticipating that we'll comp, last year's sales and hopeful that we'll see an increase. But I'm being very cautiously optimistic on that front. Again, those headwinds where we're still battling inflation, we're still, the housing market is still a little soft. So we're not really expecting to see big increases, but the goal obviously is always to comp and try to increase same store sales. But to your specific question, we do still use those six major holidays as our anchor points for the marketing, and then try to supplement it with some ancillary, promotions in between.
Got it. Yeah, like your 60-year anniversary, which I think is a phenomenal one in your market because you guys have been there for so many years, and you have beautiful stores, and I think that really helps draw in the traffic. And speaking of drawing in traffic, what other things do you see independent retail do to drive traffic, right? To pull it away from the big boxes and really make that experience with you guys unique. How do you bring in those additional traffic? That additional feet, if you will.
Yeah, so our biggest advantage, I believe, for independent retail, and this is going to be even more important, I think, for consumers, is in stock inventory and speed of delivery. So, the price battle that's going to continue, right? Like every retailer is trying to attract the same customer, and you can only compete so far on price. And our strategy has been be competitive on price, but then offer superior service and make sure that you have the inventory in stock. Because a lot of times what we're finding is, especially with bigger box retail, they'll put out a price and that'll attract that customer. But then when they go to schedule the delivery or the service, it might be a week or 2 weeks out because they're not warehousing that at the location. They have to bring that in, then they have to schedule it. They may have a back order situation. So our advantage continues to be same day pickup, next day delivery, try to keep as much inventory in stock as possible. And that's the moat that I'm trying to build around the business, right? Like keep
Right.
us competitive on the service front, and then that'll allow us to beat most of the competition, at least locally.
Right, right. Now, one thing too that I notice about the Orville stores when I visit is you guys have, I'm going to say, truly professional sales staff. And you have long-term sales staff, right? You have people that have been with you for years in each store. Talk to us about how you guys find, train, and then ultimately retain those people, because I think that's a tremendous amount of the Orville success, don't you?
It is, yeah. I think we've cultivated a unique culture at the organization where it is a career for most of the individuals that work here, specifically in sales. We try to provide them a lifestyle and the opportunity for advancement. That starts with recruiting, right? So we're looking for high character individuals. We're really not overly concerned about level of experience or frankly even their education coming in. It's more about, do you have the right mindset? Do you have the willingness to learn? And what's your work ethic? Are you willing to work hard? And if you check all those boxes, we'll train you. We'll make sure that you have all the tools and resources you need. And those people are extremely successful. And within that team, they work very well. Our sales staff, managers, associates to really help each other win. And it's a culture. We that starts at the top and it goes all the way to the guys picking inventory in the warehouse. They're very committed to customer service, doing what's right for the company and doing what's right for the customer. And you're right, we have employees that one of our more senior sales associates has been with us for almost 30 years. And that's not that unusual. We have a lot of guys who've been with us for guys and gals for, multiple decades. Actually, we matter of fact, we have one family where the third generation is now a manager. His father is still a store manager, and his grandfather was a salesperson for us.
That's fantastic. 30 years with one company is amazing. We don't see that anymore, at all, at all. So how do you do the training? Obviously you sell multiple brands in your store. When I go in, there's not a brand that you can't get at an Orville store. There's unique differences amongst the various brands that are out there. You've got every color underneath the sun. You've got every feature underneath the sun. How do you train? Do the manufacturer support you in training? Do you guys develop your own training? How does that happen?
So it's a combination of both. So we do have our own training program, which is more tactical and technical, right? So we talk about the POS system. How does that work? How do I look up inventory? How do I schedule delivery? The processing. That's mostly done internal. We also have a sales training program that all the sales associates go through. They do a lot of hands-on learning from other managers and other sales associates. But when it comes to product, that truly is the manufacturers helping us with that. They'll come in, hold sessions as a group. We'll bring in different sales groups to go through that training. We'll send them out for training. We have groups that go to the factories. They do tours, and we'll work with the manufacturer on all the specs for the different products. So to your point, when someone walks in our store, they're getting one of the absolute highest level trained sales staff in this industry locally that you can get. And by comparison, and always looking for ways to complement, I guess, how others do it, but in a different environment, let's say a big box store, you're not dealing necessarily with someone who's trained just in selling appliances. They probably have other departments that they have to work in, and may or may not know all the details when it comes to selling you, that appliance. Where this is all we do, right? Like 24/7, our guys are just focused on selling appliances. So I think that's again one of those differentiators for us in the marketplace.
Right, right. Now, there are, I'm going to say, hundreds of brands that are available in the appliance space today. How does Orville's make a decision on what brands that you're going to put in your store to offer to consumers, to train your salespeople on? How do you make those decisions? Because that's got to be hard. I mean, that really has got to be hard, Shawn.
Yeah, so we have I'd say a half dozen major brands that will kind of anchor the floor. And that's primarily because those are the brands that consumers are looking for, right? So when they walk in, we
What
want
are those brands, Shawn? What are those?
um
Name those ones.
so for us it's Whirlpool, they're complement of brands. So Whirlpool, Maytag, and KitchenAid. GE, and then for G it's GE Profile and GE Cafe. Samsung, LG, and Frigidaire. Those are kind of the anchors. And then as you move more into luxury appliances, each of the majors may have a complementary luxury brand. So GE Monogram, LG has SKS. You move into the more of the independent luxury with Sub-Zero Wolf, Bosch, Thermador. Those are kind of the anchors. You have to have those, and that's really because again, that's what consumers are demanding. And then additionally, any of the kind of niche products that we need to bring in, it's really on a case by case basis. So if someone needs a microwave drawer, we might carry a specific brand because they're the best in class in that particular appliance. We do get offers all the time from manufacturers to carry their line, and it has to check a lot of boxes for us to make that consideration. So the considerations are, we have to make sure that the cost is going to be something that makes sense for us to sell, right? The cost of those goods, that we can make enough margin to be able to pay for it to be on the floor. We have to have availability. We sell a lot of product. We do over 200 deliveries a day. So if you can't support us with the availability for our volume, then that's also not going to work for us or our customer. And then lastly, it's support, right? So putting that product on the floor with our volume, we need support from that manufacturer to the things we just talked about. Training, if we have any sort of warranty or service issues, that's support we're going to need in kind. Otherwise, it's going to be a bad experience for our customers. And if that's the case, we're just not interested.
Sure. That makes sense. And I will tell you that, again, I service, retailers all over the US, and I will tell you that Orville's really does back that if you don't service me from a brand perspective, we're not going to keep you, right? And I think that's a testament to your company and how you guys approach the market. So that's a fantastic thing as far as I'm concerned.
Just to comment on that, Shawn, a lot of that came from during COVID. Availability was so difficult. There were just a lot of supply chain constraints, and it was just difficult to get merchandise. And every retailer was making decisions on how can I get a product that will, be able to sell and keep the doors open. And you take a risk, right, on some names maybe that you haven't carried in the past because you had to. And those that were able to continue to successfully support the retailer, they're still on the floor. Those that couldn't, they're gone. We kind of call them like the COVID brands, right? Like ones that we're like, well, we need to get a 18 cubic foot, top mount for refrigerator, and this is the only one we can get, so we'll carry it. We're probably not carrying that today if we can get it somewhere else.
Sure. Would you call out a particular, as you said, COVID brand that performed well? Is there a particular one?
You know what? There was if I look back, one that kind of comes to mind, we had there were some supplies chain constraints with dishwashers, and we found an opportunity with Becco. It was a brand that we hadn't carried previously. They were able to get us dishwashers that were very comparable to another brand. It worked really well for us for a couple of years. We had a vignette on the floor, did have some success, good support. Some things changed with their company in the last, I'd say, year or two, and for a lot of different reasons, it didn't make as much sense as it did at the time. But I would say that's a perfect example of they saw an opportunity, there was a need to fill, they had the availability and the production that they could support independent retail at that time, and for us, we went with them.
Got it. What would be the number one brand that's sold at Orville's? However you want to define number one brand, what would that brand be?
It's funny because it's definitely something that changes sometimes on a quarterly basis. We obviously look at it, annually from year to year. Currently, it's sort of a two-horse race between LG and Whirlpool. And when I say Whirlpool brands, right? That's all in. I think part of that is for LG, it's definitely availability, and it's a pull brand. We do find that consumers come in asking for specific models. And to be clear, we're brand agnostic. If you walk in and there's a brand you want, we will sell it to you, right? Like we're not favoring any one brand, but that's just the hard data. So LG's definitely been number one or number two, followed by Whirlpool. I don't know that there's any particular reason other than availability and pricing, and then, like I said, consumer preference. If they come in and ask for it, we're absolutely gonna sell it to them.
Right. Well, the Korean brands, LG and Samsung, as you know, were the first to introduce color. They brought a lot of really unique features to the business. One of the very first questions I had to ask you about was how tariffs were impacting your business. Is tariffs impacting LG and Samsung? Because I'm not, if I remember right, most of their product actually still comes from Korea, right? I mean, it's actually shipped here from there.
It does, yeah. So the strategy for them has been trying to put containers together where you're buying factory direct. So for the most part, that product's going to come in for us into the East Coast, most likely New Jersey, into some sort of regional distribution center, and then we'll pull mostly from our distribution centers to fill our inventory. Their strategy is if you can buy factory direct, get it on a container, you're going to buy more volume. You're going to get a little bit of savings there, and then that will allow you to make the necessary margin to be able to sell it competitively in the marketplace. Um, Again, that there's some big headwinds there, right? Like even the cost of shipping for the containers has started to really increase, which during COVID that was a major problem, right? Like you couldn't find trucking, the containers were expensive. So I think we're going to continue to see the impact of that on the cost of goods. Their strategy, specifically LG, has been really promoting their containers, trying to offer incentives to have you take as much as you can. When for us, we have a 150,000 square foot warehouse. We can afford to do that. We have the space. For a lot of smaller retail, that's difficult. They might be using a distributor, somebody who has a warehouse that they pull from. So as long as their availability and their pricing remains consistent, we should be able to continue to have success with them. For Samsung specifically, that was a brand that was huge for us during COVID. Frankly, because they were able to supply us. There were a lot of brands that just couldn't, and they found a way. So they stayed high, in our top three for a number of years just because of that availability. That company has had some challenges this year, and things have changed for them a little bit. You mentioned the colors and some of the technology. They had the Family Hub, which was really big for their refrigeration. Their bespoke line, where you can do different colored panels, that's been very successful for them. So I think they're still trying to figure out what their next move is. Whether that's innovation and technology, or is it going to be a way they go to market? But I think right now they're still trying to figure that out.
So is Whirlpool, Whirlpool does a lot of manufacturing in the US and, let's say North America, because I know they do have quite a bit of manufacturing out of Mexico. But, are you having any availability issues with Whirlpool today? Are they still able to supply, and are they able to, meet your demands?
They have been able to, and their story that they're bringing to the independent retail is, you're going to benefit from our domestic production, right? So, not having to worry about the tariffs for anything that's on the water coming in, that is an advantage for them. And I do think they've really doubled down on that. They're looking to expand their production. I know GE has also made some pretty big announcements with investments they're making in the United States for production. I think some of the details of the tariffs that will be still sorted out in the future are cost of steel and components. So some of the raw materials are still coming in from other countries outside the United States. And when you look at it being assembled in the United States, how does that impact the total cost of those goods when you don't know, like, what percentage was imported steel, or what percentage are these electronic components coming from China? That's the part where we're still trying to navigate that. But as it relates to Whirlpool, I think they're positioned really well for domestic availability and production that'll make them very competitive from a tariff perspective.
Right. Well, you talked about GE. GE is obviously owned by a foreign corporation. They have a large footprint in Louisville and have for years and years, and they're obviously making additional investments there. Do you see any similar impacts to with the GE business? I know you talked about steel and components, but are they also importing all those pieces and parts? Because I mean, Appliance Park is a if nobody's ever seen it, that's a phenomenal tour to go into. So, talk a little bit about what's going on with GE.
Yeah, I think they're positioned well domestically to take advantage of being very competitive from a tariff perspective. I haven't heard as much other than the what we hear, I guess, publicly on the announcements for the investment in more production. I think they're also, going to fight the same headwinds with, if components are going to be tariffed in any way. Even, again, it's not necessarily U.S. steel that they're buying, although they may change their strategy. Components coming in from China, they are owned. It's a Chinese company, right? So that's going to be, I think, it's going to take a few months for us to sort that out. But from our perspective, still have good availability, still domestically produced. Pulling, inventory locally makes a huge difference to us in terms of availability. I think again, August is really going to be um, interesting after we get, the second half of the year, to see, is this going to be a cost of goods story? Is it going to be an availability story? What's really going to be the result of the tariffs? And for now, that's the uncertainty that makes it really difficult to make plans, quite frankly.
Right, right. No, I hear you. And COVID was obviously had a tremendous impact on retail. It had a multi-year pull forward of the replacement cycle. Has that righted itself now? Are we back into a regular replacement cycle? And then to piggyback on that, during COVID, we saw a tremendous amount of, let's say, the luxury brands had trouble with availability. I visited a client one time and during COVID or after COVID, that told me it was going to be 6 months before they could deliver a product. I won't say the brand, but are they? Are we able to say that's behind us now? And kind of what's happening with the replacement cycle?
So the multi-part question, so I'll break it down. The from the luxury side, yeah, we had the brand I think you're referencing that we were given delivery ETAs of 2 years, kind of during COVID and post COVID. Again, it was supply chain issues and just a lot of constraints with labor. A lot of times you just couldn't have people working in the factories. So that's definitely improved. We still encourage our customers that are buying those goods to come in, 6 months or at least if they can a year in advance to get their orders placed, just so they're in line for that product. But that has definitely improved. We're kind of into more of a normal cadence with the luxury brands, and quite frankly, with most of the brands now, that's really not as much of an issue. Um, from a promotional perspective, and from a pull ahead demand perspective, we have definitely seen the cycle. The duress cycle is starting to normalize. So really more into I would say 5 to 7 year replacement cycle for most entry to mid level appliances. That's very typical. We are definitely seeing that return to normal. Because part of the issue, right, during COVID is everybody was home. They were just using their appliances a lot more. So that not only was it, I'm home and I'm looking at this really old dishwasher that I just want to replace because I don't want to look at it anymore, but it was also utilization. That utilization just kind of increased the need to replace. Um, but what's interesting about COVID too is that not every independent retailer was prepared to have their online store be as good of an experience as being there in person, and we learned a lot of lessons from that. So we really changed the way we went to market. We made online a priority. We've made it, that experience needs to be as good or better than your regular in-store experience. So we were very intentional about changes we made. We completely revamped our website, our process. We put more resources in place for support, for customer support and sales. And honestly, that's kind of our path forward, right? Like we need to make sure that in addition to brick and mortar, most people start that sales process now on their phone. They're doing their research and then, going through the sales funnel to either buying online or buying in person. And for that customer that never wants to go into a store, I got to make sure my online store is ready to take that business. So I think that was a huge opportunity during COVID that we've leaned into. I think some retailers, it's a little scary for them. Like, geez, I might not have a customer going to a physical store, but at the end of the day, your online store should be your most profitable location.
Right, right. That's true. Very true. So you belong to a large buying group. I believe you belong to Brand Source, and talk a little bit about the benefits that Orville's achieves by being a member of Brand Source. We just had our recent show, and we're all out in Vegas, and I lost money. So hopefully, you came away with money. But talk a little bit about how being part of Brand Source benefits Orville's.
Yeah. So for us, that buying group, it's sort of like a fraternity, right? So you're in a group with like minded dealers. The information sharing, just in terms of best practices, new ideas, it could be, manufacturer specific, some suggestions or ways that as a group we can go to those manufacturers to discuss issues. But what we benefit most from, and I think something that is very unique to Brand Source, is they offer a lot of ancillary services. So for us, we've now our website, they manage our website for us. We shifted from a lot of traditional media, which was primarily print, radio and TV. That budget is heavily digital now, and they have a fantastic platform for that. So it's so hard as an independent retailer. We don't have the resources internally to have a complete IT department and to have a guy dedicated just to doing our website, or a marketing team that can stay on top of every trend. So we give them a budget. They have that team, right? They have, hundreds of people behind the scenes that are doing that. And I think that makes them very unique. And they tell that story during the meetings that we go to. There's, dealers that are leaning into those strategies and benefiting from it. And there's those that are still kind of apprehensive about making a change like that. And I know for me, when I came into the organization, that was a big focus. Like, the way that we did business for the last 60 years cannot be how we do it going forward, right? To maintain our presence and our relative, being relative in the marketplace, you have to adapt. And I think that they've helped us with that tremendously. It's been a great group for us.
Right. That's great. So, as you know, I'm a service contract provider, and you sell a lot of I'm going to say non-product services, from delivery to service contract to installation. Talk about how those services support Orville's, and how that helps, from a loyalty standpoint, profitability standpoint. How does that really support the mission at Orville's?
Yeah. So the additional services, right? So you buy, your washer dryer from us. Obviously, delivery, installation, accessories that are necessary for that product. Those are all things that are sort of transactional, as just part of the logistics of getting the product to your home. After that, it's really talking to the customer about the value of what happens after that purchase, right? So for most of the products that we sell, the manufacturer is going to offer their 1 year manufacturer warranty. Limited warranty, it's going to cover, parts and service for anything that goes wrong. But we all know it's highly unlikely that if an issue is going to surface, that it's going to be just within that first year. So what we'll typically tell the customer is, you can purchase an extended warranty, and there's a few benefits to that. One is the cost of the warranty in most cases will be at or less than what the cost is for just running a service call. So if that customer calls us, 2 years or 3 years into the life of that product, they're going to pay a few $100s to have that diagnosed, run the service call, pay for parts. By contrast, you buy the warranty, now that's covered. So I think for a lot of people who haven't purchased appliances in quite a few years, their understanding of what appliance reliability and service life is to what reality is just changed a lot. And that's really nobody's fault, right? That's just, components are different. I think we expect a lot of our appliances today, and the idea that your mom and dad's refrigerator that lasted for 20 years, it's just not reality anymore. So we tell that story, and I think most customers, if they don't ask for it, it's in their mind, right? Like, we have to make sure we at least made the offer, and frankly, we do really well with it. From our partnership, that we are able to make a little bit of extra profit on selling those warranties to customers, and that's one of those differentiators for us, that it helps us tell a customer story and make us relevant to the other retail in the marketplace.
Right, right. So one thing that's pretty unique these days about Orville's is you guys have your own service department. And there's this ongoing debate about, should service be a profit center? Should it be a cost of just doing business? Right. And how does Orville's approach, the Orville Service Center? Because you guys have a great organization, great techs. I've been friends with your service manager for 25 years, and you got a great group there. So talk about how service is handled at Orville's, and how you guys approach that dynamic there.
Yeah, so it's an argument I think is as old as Orville's. Should the service department try to be a profit center, or is it just necessary to support sales? So, um, in my opinion, and first of all, you're absolutely correct. We have a amazing group of individuals, from our customer service reps who take those calls to the actual service technicians, the management team. They're again, a group that's probably been here tenure wise, some of them for decades, and they do a great job. The challenge is that we want to take care of the customer first, and in order to do that, for anyone who's had that issue where it's a newer product in the home, to try to expedite that manufacturer portion, right, within the first year. That can sometimes be a challenge for the customer just to get in touch with the right people and get it scheduled. So our opinion is that's a call we have to take, and that we're gonna try to service that customer, even if it means it doesn't make sense financially for Orville's, right? That's that moat, that differentiation of what we offer that nobody else can. I don't want that customer to feel like they have to wait to call out of state, to schedule with somebody they don't know. So that's number one. And when you do that, you're not going to make money, right? Like that's a call we're going to run, and we're probably just going to have to, eat the cost.
Yeah, that's
But
cost of loyalty, right?
it is, right? And it's partially cost of sales, right? Like we sold it to them, we'll stand behind it. We're buying that, to your point, loyalty for the next time they want to purchase. The second piece of it is doing the in-service warranty calls that we get. Again, we're qualified on a lot of brands to do that. We will, as much as possible, take those. But the second piece is those out of warranty calls where the customer is willing to pay, and they're willing to pay whatever the rate is just to get it fixed. I'd love to do more of that business. But as you know, it's tough to find qualified people, technicians, and specifically just appliance technicians. It's not a necessarily career that a lot of high school kids are clamoring to find a program for. So we did actually put together an internship program where we'll offer the opportunity for an employee who's in a different department to go into a technician apprenticeship, work with one of our mentors, and then when they graduate, now they're able to go on a service truck, and in a lot of cases they make very good money. It's not like you can't have a good living doing it. It's just sort of like the secret. There's just not a lot of demand in the marketplace from employees who want to go into that path. So the challenge for us is I'd love to say I can make this a profit center, but until the labor market changes or until something else changes in the industry, it's just difficult for us to do that. I definitely don't view it as you got to do it just to, it's a necessary evil. I think there are some dealers that feel that way about it. I think for us, it's a opportunity to provide a service that somebody else can't, and do it locally and do it better. And for that reason, it's, whether it's profit and service dollars, or it's profit because we're going to get that next sale, to your point, the loyalty, you have to do it.
Right. Yeah, I grew up in the service business, and the technicians that are there today are, they're all in their mid to late 50s, and I have an opinion that we've lied to our young people about. Everybody has to have a college degree, or you're not going to make money, and we're missing out on the ton of the trade opportunity. And the young people that don't go to college all become programmers instead of some of these other things, right? And I do think there's a tremendous opportunity in the trades, and appliance is one that is going to be in every home for the until we have the Jetsons age, right, where you walk up and you put your stuff in the microwave and it's cooked and it's ready, and all that type of stuff. But well, Shawn, let's make a shift in our last few minutes here to talk about you personally, because I've known you now for 2.5 years, I guess it is. That's how long you've been with Orville's now. Is that right?
Actually, so I'm in my fifth year, and as you know, my predecessor, he did manage a lot of the relationships prior to me moving into this role. So you and I came together, I think, in more recent history, but yeah, I think it's probably close to 3 years now that we've worked closely together.
So talk a little bit about your background, because you do have a pretty unique background. I mean, you weren't born into the appliance space like a lot of leaders are in this organization, or these organizations. You had to learn the appliance space, and my estimation is you've done a fantastic yeoman's job of learning the appliance space and what it takes to be successful. As Mickey retired, you stepped into the CE role, as you mentioned, and I think Mickey had been there for 30 plus years. He'd been there for a long time. So talk a little bit about your background, and then I've got some questions about your leadership style and how you've kind of taken over. So
Appreciate that. Yeah, so definitely a non-traditional path into the appliance industry. So my primary background is in media. So went to college for business administration with an emphasis in advertising. Really thought my path was going to be more with like an ad agency working in Chicago or New York, working with big clients and doing media plans. Um, it was a different time, right? So this is in the early '90s when I got out of school, and didn't ended up going into sales, but not necessarily in media initially, and found my way into media via newspapers. So worked for a few different big newspaper companies, Gannett, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company that owned a newspaper here in Buffalo. Worked in Ohio for Advanced Media, the Newhouse family. They still produce a few newspapers across the country, but that was almost 2 decade career. That what I did benefit from it is it gave me exposure to a lot of different types of companies. Right, so you're doing media plans, and as part of that, you have to really get to know their business and understand how you're going to help them with sales. So I had exposure to large retail, J.C. Penney, Macy's, at the time, Radio Shack, lots of big companies, but also small companies, working with mom and pops locally, and getting a better understanding of how their business works and what their needs were. So I met Mickey, it was probably 15 years ago now. Their Orville's was one of the largest advertisers with the local newspaper, and we started building a relationship. Part of that was built on golf. We both have a passion for golfing. So we just became pretty close, and even when I wasn't working in this market, I'd worked in a couple other states. We just stayed in touch, and I left the industry about 10 years ago, left and pursued a career in sponsorships with Live Nation. And so Live Nation Ticketmaster, uh, I'll call it my midlife crisis career change. I really just wanted to do something different, and that was definitely it. It was a fantastic opportunity, great company. Got to see some live artists and meet bands that I was a huge fan of. That it was truly a dream job. Um, the only issue is that COVID happened and everything in live entertainment kind of came to a halt. So, one of the few things you could still do during COVID was golf, as long as you were able to socially distance and, most of the time just walk the course, you could still get out. So, I had actually reconnected with Mickey during that period, and he just asked me a question. He said, "Have you ever thought about, a career in retail?" And I said, "Not to be honest with you, not not really." But at the time, I was working for Live Nation and doing some consulting, and he said, I think maybe if you got to know what we do in this industry, you'd be surprised. It's kind of this like best kept secret what we do." And so it made sense for me to come in. There was not a succession plan in place at the time for the executive team, so I came in very low key, kind of under the radar. I worked alongside Mickey as his general manager. My goal coming in was just be a sponge, learn everything I can about how they sell appliances, how do the logistics work, how's this finance, work, all of it. I just absorbed as much as I could for really the first 2 years. And slowly over time, we built out a succession plan for the executive team, for the family on the equity side, and really for the entire company. And over that period of time, Mickey took more and more of a back seat and would start spending more of his time in Florida, just to kind of give me an opportunity to take the reins. And for that 2 year period, that's what we did alongside each other. And then when the time was right, he retired last year. So I can't tell you what a tremendous opportunity it's been for me. It's the family that owns the company is incredible. The employees we have it's the reason we're successful, and I pinch myself every day just saying this is the best opportunity I've ever had. So I'm obviously going to give myself credit for hard work and what I did over the years to get to this position, but I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity.
Yeah, I hear you. Going to work every day and enjoying what you do, the cliche is it's not a job, and that's how I feel too. So I understand that very much so. So Mickey Reale obviously was a legend in the Orville's space. He was named to the Hall of Fame for the buying group. I mean, he had a sterling career. So you had to step into a role of a guy that I'm going to say was probably loved by the organization for the most part, right? I mean, if you did your job, you didn't have a better friend than Mickey in the organization. So, how do you step in, behind a person like that? What was the secret to helping you get seated in Orville so that you can continue the success? Because you've had tremendous success over the last couple of years.
So I think it starts with humility. In order to really earn the respect of the management team and the employees, my first couple of months that I was here, I would go out on a delivery truck and I would just learn how these guys do deliveries and spend a few days with them. Go on an installation truck, spend a few days in service, understanding how they do their jobs. My goal was to understand how that process worked and understand the people and the process we had in place literally from the ground up. So in doing that, I listened a lot, right? So I just listened to what people said. And if there were things that they were saying that were areas for improvement, I made notes and I just kind of kept track of that. And I was building relationships, right? Like I came in from outside the organization. Nobody had any reason to give me any respect or give me any trust. So all of that has to be earned. And I think that approach coming in, understanding the business, my goal is to, I want to pay homage to everybody before me who's put in the work and give them the respect they deserve, but also understand that we're building for the future, right? So, things that we did in the past that were successful may or may not be the reason we're successful going forward. And sometimes change can be difficult, but you have to be willing to take calculated risks and work with the tools that we have and work with the people that we have and listen, and take their ideas and then lead. And that's the analogy I use is, my job is not, if this company is a train, my job is not to drive the train. That's what all the people that are here, do. They make sure that the engine's running properly and that, we're on the right speed and, all of the logistics of making it work. My job is to look at the map and say, where am I laying the tracks? Where do we go next? Because if you're driving that train really fast in the wrong direction, you'll get there. You'll probably make record time, but it's not where you want to be.
Yeah,
So
you
I
may slam into that wall, right?
exactly, yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
getting there fast doesn't always mean that it's the right place to be. So that's how I see it. I try to look at the whole organization, make sure that we're headed in the right direction. Priority number one, and I mean this sincerely, I look at it as we support, 200 families. That's, the employees that we have, we're supporting them. And it's my job to make sure we can continue to do that for as long as possible. And if you have that kind of mindset, the rest of it comes pretty easy.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I'm a lifelong learner. I love to read books. My favorite book is Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I go back to that every year and read that. And one of the concepts you just talked about, as far as the going in the wrong direction, it talks about the ladder leaning against the wrong wall. Right, you're going to get to the top of the wall, but it's not going to be the building that you wanted to be on. And so, is there a favorite book that you've had in your career, Shawn, that has helped you with your management philosophy or style?
Yeah, there's a lot of and I won't have any specific ones, but a lot of sales training. I believe nothing happens until you make that sale, right? So I'm always looking for new sales training, new techniques. We actually have a partnership right now with Retail Brilliance. It's a training program for sales specific for retail. We rolled that out to our staff at the beginning of the year. That's been very effective. I'm always a firm believer in overcoming objections, trying to find a way to take down that no to the path to a yes. So I work closely with our regional sales managers and our CMO on new techniques and some new things that we can implement with sales. Outside of that, I'm a big Covey fan as well. I believe in those habits, and I believe in a lot of what's put into the book about what makes someone successful and how you continue your success. I have been dabbling a little bit in some EOS, right? So processes. How do you set effective goals? How do you put, a matrix in place to measure those goals effectively? I think that was an opportunity when I came into this role within the organization. We always found a way to be successful, but I don't know that we had all the accountability in place to measure it. So you can't manage what you can't measure. So I've tried really hard to get into the data, try to find the data markers and repeat those that work, and try to eliminate those that are a detriment to our success. And that's, again, one of those keys to success long term.
Right. So one of the things you said earlier on that I thought was kind of interesting was that when you came in is when Orville's really started a succession plan. And one of the things that I know about you already is that you've already started a succession plan, and you've been there for I'd say 5 years. You and I've been connected for a couple of years, 2.5, 3 years now. Talk a little bit about how you got to that, and kind of what do you see for the future of Orville's in that succession plan.
So so our third generation owner, so Orville is our, first generation owner that started the company. His son David, second generation, still in the business, and then his son Nick, third generation. So Nick owns a gym. He owns a performance gym locally, and he went through a program which is in partnership with the University of Buffalo locally called CEL, Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. And it was a pretty impactful program for him where they teach you about, for him specifically, how to work on your business instead of just in your business, right? So specifically in his, it's service, so it's hands on. He's in there training athletes, working in the gym, and they gave him the perspective of what if you could get more resources working in the business, you step back from it and you think about growth and strategies that would help you grow the business by not necessarily just working harder. So that was really it was an impactful event for him going through that process. I went through the same program, would be 2 years ago now, with the idea of let's look at Orville's and let's look at what are the opportunities and what should be our focus going forward. And what became very clear was this succession plan, right? Like Mickey had the foresight to say, he knew his time horizon with Orville's was going to be limited, but we got to backfill, and we did a really good job with that piece, but we didn't look at the rest of the organization. Again, kind of bifurcating it into equity. What does it mean for Nick and his sister and the family? Like, how does that work? Have they had that discussion? And then for the operation, it's looking for those single points of failure. Who's doing a job that if we use the term hit by the lottery, if they got hit by the lottery, what is going to be the backfill for that? How do
Right.
we make sure that the operation continues? So I've been very intentional in creating, the organization so that should something happen, there is no reason that we can't continue to do what we do at the level that we do it. And then my goal now, we just celebrated our 60-year anniversary. My goal now in working with the board is deciding what's Orville 75, right? So let's look forward to our 75 years and what do we need to do now to make us more successful and hit whatever that vision is that we want in another 15 years. What markets should we be looking at? How many stores do we have? What are we doing in sales? What's our transactional output look like? What are we doing in service, right? Like those are all things that we have to consider now. And I think it's easy to get caught up in just working in the business, right? You put your head down, you just got to get the job done. But as an executive and as a leader in the organization, that's the goal, right? I should be able to be removed from the equation at some point and everything continues to operate as it should. And that's something that I would challenge every owner and executive to do is consider that, right? It's life happens, things are going to change, and are you prepared to continue the success for another 60 years?
Yeah, and I would tell you that's probably the number one, I'm going to call it a failure. Number one failure that I see in independent retail is not planning for the future, right?
Yep.
You know, people are working, in the business, not on the business, and the leadership team is not thinking about the retirement and smelling the roses and having a good time as you've earned the right to do that. And that's why you see, I'm going to say, a lot of business failures, right? Because you get somebody that comes in as the next generation that really didn't get the training, didn't really get the exposure, right? Their mom or dad just disappeared all of a sudden. Now they're in charge.
Yep. Or you become, frankly, if you're successful enough, you become a target for, a private equity company or a merger, right? Like you if that's what success looks like for, you and your business, then that's fine. But be intentional about it. Like make that your goal. Hey, let's build our valuation to be as high as possible so that when the day comes, we get the maximum value for a transaction. Every company will transact at some point. That's inevitable. So you just have to prepare for what do you want it to look like. And we literally started that entire succession planning process by asking that question. All the stakeholders at the table, we said, what does success look like? What's your version of that? And now let's start trying to build backwards to get there.
Right. Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Shawn Buffum, CEO of Orville's Home Appliance, Buffalo, New York. Shawn, thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome. I've learned a tremendous amount, and I look forward to continuing to do business with the Orville's team for many years to come. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Shawn. Really appreciate the opportunity.